Chapter 10. When Tiana opened her eyes, all she could see was blue silk. Lots of blue silk. She was somehow under a mountain of it. Faldanza, she heard the frog exclaim. She found her way out and glanced up at the frog who was on the dresser. You don't look that much different, she said. But how'd you get way up there, and how did I get way down here? Tiana turned and suddenly saw herself in Charlotte's mirror. Aye! She screamed. Her reflection showed a frog squatting on a blue silk gown. Instead of the frog becoming a human prince, Tiana had become a frog. Don't panic! Don't panic! The other frog called down to her. What did you do to me? Tiana shouted. She jumped onto the dresser and struggled with Naveen. The two of them tumbled right out the bedroom window. They landed on a drum in the orchestra below. The drummer hit the cymbal, and Tiana and Naveen were catapulted into the air. They sailed over the heads of the partygoers and down the back of Charlotte's ball gown. Ooh! Charlotte said with a jump as the two frogs slid down her spine. She started to squirm. What's gone into that gal? Big Daddy said as he watched Charlotte wiggle and shake around the dance floor. Then everyone saw the two frogs. Hey, Stella! Big Daddy called out to the bloodhound. Get those frogs! Run! Naveen shrieked. He grabbed Tiana and they leaped onto the huge banquet table. Stella barreled through the crowd as they hopped across the silver trays of food. They leaped onto Mr. Fenner and his brother, who were leaning over the punch bowl. Tiana and Naveen dove into the horse costume, climbed over one Mr. Fenner, and scrambled over the other Mr. Fenner to exit out the rear end. Oh dear! The latter Mr. Fenner cried as Stella took a bite out of the back end of his costume. Naveen noticed the balloons decorating the lawn. He quickly grabbed a handful of balloon strings and untied them. Going up! He yelled, taking Tiana's hand, and they rose into the dark sky. From behind a statue on the LaBeouf estate, Dr. Facilier glared up at the sky. Then he noticed a man running to the estate's bachelor quarters. It was Prince Naveen, the man who had just been dancing with Charlotte, except that the man was really Lawrence. It was all part of Dr. Facilier's plan. He had turned Prince Naveen into a frog, and he had made Lawrence look exactly like the prince. But there was a problem. The talisman Lawrence wore around his neck needed Naveen for his magic to work. Without the magic, Lawrence would look like Lawrence again. Lawrence rushed to the door and threw open a cabinet. He stared at an empty jar on the shelf and muttered, "Oh dear." Suddenly, the shadow of Dr. Facilier loomed silently and ominously over him. "Oh, you're so quiet," the startled prince said, turning to look at the sinister doctor. Dr. Facilier glared at the empty jar in a rage. Naveen the frog had escaped. "You let him go!" Dr. Facilier sneered accusingly. "The poor devil was gasping," the prince look-alike answered in Lawrence's timid voice, "so I loosened the lid ever so slightly." Dr. Facilier backed Lawrence into a corner as a shadow moved behind him menacingly and then tripped him. I can't go through with this," Lawrence said, stumbling over his words. He pulled off the talisman hanging around his neck, and in an instant, he looked like his true self again. "You were this ghastly thing," Lawrence demanded as he threw the talisman. Dr. Facilier dove to catch the precious charm before it hit the floor. "Oh, that's a grand idea, Larry. Why don't I just perform some voodoo on myself, or maybe wave a magic wand and conjure up a big old pile of money?" Dr. Facilier demanded, glaring at Lawrence. "Fun fact about voodoo, Larry. I can't conjure a thing for myself. Besides, you and I both know the real power in this world isn't magic, it's money." Dr. Facilier held up the talisman and explained that he needed Naveen to power its magic. He replaced the talisman around Lawrence's neck, and Lawrence transformed again into the image of the real Prince Naveen. Dr. Facilier smiled. "You just charmed Daddy's little honey, win her scented hand, and we'll split the big fat LaBeouf fortune right down the middle, 60-40, just like I said." "But what about the prince?" Lawrence asked. "An annoying complication we're going to sail right past," Dr. Facilier said darkly.